Dear students and my teacher friends, Namaskar. I welcome you to the presentation lecture on the structure of the synovial joint. Now, in your medical entrance syllabus, fibrous joints are included, cartilaginous joint are included, and the synovial joints are included. Now, we have already studied the fibrous joint, then we have studied the cartilaginous joint, and for the synovial joint, there are two things. First, in this lecture, today we are going to discuss the structure of the synovial joint, which are the component of the synovial joint, or what the synovial joint is and what the synovial joint is made up of, and where in our body the synovial joints are present. So all this thing we are going to discuss in this lecture, and in next lecture we are going to discuss the type of synovial joint. So in next lecture we will discuss the type of synovial joint. Now today we are going to learn what are the synovial joint and where they are present. Now here I am showing you few figures. For example, these are the synovial joint of our finger. So our finger of our hand is shown, hand, finger, and in the finger this bone, middle phalanx they are showing. Then this is the distal phalanx, and here between the middle phalanx and the distal phalanx, as you can see, this is the synovial joint is shown. So you go through this figure. So synovial joint in our finger between the phalanx. Then here same thing, synovial joint in the figure in our finger, but here we cannot see that joint. The reason is the joint is covered by the ligament, that's why, and they are also showing with the red color the arteries and the nerves. This is our knee joint. This is the knee joint, synovial joint, and here you can see the femur is shown. So knee joint is formed between femur, tala, and the tibia. So this is the knee joint. Knee joint is the example of the synovial joint, and here the same knee joint is shown, but here in this, one minute, by mistake it was closed. So this is the same knee joint, but here we cannot see this type of joint, but this is actually posterior view and along with the ligament. So the synovial joint is covered by the ligament. Okay, then this is our shoulder joint. You read all the names. Then again knee joint, and this figure is from different physiology book. Then this is again knee joint, and with the muscle and the ligament and the tendon. Shoulder joint, once again example of synovial joint. All the names you go through. Then this is okay, this figure. Then this is right elbow, right elbow joint. So right elbow joint is formed between the humerus, radius and ulna. Synovial joint. Then this joint, hip joint. We know the hip joint is formed between the head of femur, and the head fits in the acetabulum of the hip bone. So this is the hip joint. Okay. Read all the names. Then with the ligaments. Now we are starting this presentation lecture. What are the synovial joints? So this is the first point, how the synovial joint work. See, in our body there are approximately 320 or so joints. Approximately 320 joints are there, and majority of them are the free moving or the synovial joint. So most of our body's joints are the free moving synovial joint, and this joint allow us to do wide range of movement. Let's say we can walk, we can run, we can jump with the synovial, with the help of synovial joint. Then we are able to chew our food. Then with the pen we can write on the paper. So all these functions, we can perform this function or these activities with the help of synovial joint. Now where the synovial joint are present? So synovial joint are present where two long bones are meeting together. So here in this figure, one synovial joint is shown. This is the synovial joint, and the articulate surface of the bone. For example, this is the bone, this one is the bone, and between these two bones the synovial joint is there, and the surface of the bone, let's say I'm showing you the surface of the bone. So as you can see, on the surface of the bone, articular cartilage is present. And what is this articular cartilage is made up of? So articular cartilage is made up of glassy, smooth hyaline cartilage. So articular cartilage which is present on the surface of the bone is actually hyaline cartilage. And you have already studied the structure of hyaline cartilage. Just in case you are interested, I am showing you this. This is the figure of hyaline cartilage, and here some information regarding the hyaline cartilage. So if you are interested, you can go through this information regarding the hyaline cartilage. Now this was the first point. Now the second point. Now before we discuss the second point, I am showing you few of the synovial joint. Number one, ellipsoidal, where it is present. So you can go through this information, you can read this information. I am not explaining this because I will take the separate lecture, the next lecture, and in that we will discuss this thing. But I am showing you so that you can start your preparation regarding the types of the synovial joint. Number two, then these are all synovial joint: ball and socket, pivot, hinge, saddle, and with a number they are showing where they are present. Okay, for example, the hip joint. So hip joint, ball and socket joint, this is hip joint. Then pivot, where exactly the pivot joint is present. Then the hinge joint, number 5. Elbow joint. Then the saddle joint, number 6. And this is the information. Saddle joint. Okay, so you can go through this information. Then this. Now, second point we are discussing. Now, synovial joint have certain characteristic, or synovial joint are having some peculiarities, and this peculiarity are distinguish the synovial joint from the other joint. So there are some differences between the synovial joint and other kind of joint, and synovial joint is possessing some unique features. So what are the features of synovial joint? That the unique characteristic of the synovial joint is the presence of space between the articulating bone, and this space is known as synovial cavity or the joint cavity. So in the synovial joint, between the articulating bone, cavity is present, and that cavity is known as synovial cavity or the joint cavity. So in the figure, for example, this is the synovial joint, this entire joint is the synovial joint, and this cavity, joint cavity. So synovial, this is the synovial cavity or the joint cavity. So between the two articulating bone, in between the bone, the joint cavity or the synovial cavity is present in synovial joint. So this is the second point regarding the synovial cavity or the joint cavity. Now moving on the third point of our discussion. Now, synovial cavity allow us to do considerable movement at the joint, and since we can move the bones at these joints, that's why these synovial joints functionally they are classified as the free movable joint, or functionally they are known as diarthrosis. So synovial joint functionally they are known as free movable or the diarthrosis joint. Now moving on the fourth point of our discussion. Now the articulating bones they are covered by the layer of hyaline cartilage, and that layer of hyaline cartilage is known as the articular cartilage. So here in the figure you can see these are the two articulating bone, and with this gray color so the top surface of the bone is covered by articular cartilage. So in the fourth point the surface of the bone is covered by layer of hyaline cartilage, and that layer of hyaline cartilage is known as the articular cartilage. Now what this cartilage is doing, so cartilage is covering the articulating surface of the bone, okay, and due to this articulating cartilage, what happened, they the bones does not bind together, okay, so bones are remain apart due to the presence of articular cartilage. Then fifth point, now what this articular cartilage is doing on the surface of the bone, so articular cartilage is reducing the friction between the bones of the joint during movement. Let's say when we are walking, running, jumping, that time this articulate cartilage is reducing the friction, and at the same time, if any kind of jerk is there, so that jerk or shock is absorbed by articular cartilage. So we can say in simple word that the articular cartilage is actually protecting our bones from friction and the shock during various kind of movement, running, walking, climbing, jumping at that time. Now sixth point is regarding the, in the sixth point we are discussing the articular capsule, the other name of articular capsule. Articular capsule is also known as the joint capsule. So first over here you observe the joint capsule. This is the joint capsule. Now what is articular capsule? So as you can see, the articular capsule is the sleeve like, it is a sleeve like articular capsule, or also known as the joint capsule, and it is surrounding the synovial joint. So here in the figure you can see the synovial joint is surrounded by articular capsule or the joint capsule. Now this articular capsule is surrounding the synovial joint, okay, and it is also enclosing the synovial cavity. So this is the synovial cavity and it is surrounded by joint capsule. Now there are two layers in this articular capsule. There are two layers. One layer is known as the fibrous membrane and the second layer is known as the synovial membrane. Now as we can see in the figure that the fibrous membrane or the fibrous capsule is the layer which is present outside, okay, and the synovial membrane is present inside. Fibrous membrane present outside, synovial membrane present inside in the joint capsule. So this is the theory point and this is the figure. Now moving on the seventh point of our discussion. Now in seventh point we are going to discuss about the fibrous membrane. This is the fibrous membrane and this one is the periosteum. So in seventh point there are two terms: fibrous membrane, periosteum. Now, what the fibrous membrane is made up of? So, fibrous membrane usually consists of dense, irregular connective tissue, and in this connective tissue, collagen fibers are present. And this collagen fibers of fibrous membrane, this fiber attaches to the periosteum of the articulating bones. Once again, fibrous membrane is made up of connective tissue having collagen fibers, and this fiber attaches to the periosteum of the articulating bones. Now, what is fibrous membrane? So, fibrous membrane is literally a thickened continuation of periosteum between the bones. So, the periosteum of the bones is continued, and that continued layer is known as the fibrous membrane. Now, what this fibrous membrane is doing? So, the flexibility of fibrous membrane permitting the movement of a joint. Okay, since the fibrous membrane is flexible, it is permitting considerable movement at a joint, and the great tensile strength of the fibrous membrane helping prevent the bones from dislocating. So, with the help of fibrous membrane in the synovial joint, articulating bone remain at the same place all the time. So, the fibrous membrane is also preventing the displacement of bone from the joint. So, this is the function of fibrous membrane in the synovial joint. So, you go through this figure. So, this is the theory point, and this is the figure for this point. Now, moving on the 8th point. Now, in the 8th point, we are going to discuss about the ligaments. So, here, this is the ligament. So, the entire synovial joint covered by the ligaments. So, around the synovial joint, many ligaments are present. And what these ligaments are? See, the fibers of the fibrous membrane, they arrange parallel in the bundles. Okay, and these bundles are of dense regular connective tissue in which the collagen fibers are present, and these bundles are highly adapted for resisting the strains. And this bundle of the regular connective tissue which is having the collagen fibers, so these bundles of connective tissue with the collagen fibers are known as the ligaments. And ligaments bound or tied. So in short, the ligaments are made up of fibrous membrane, the bundle of the regular connective tissue, and the collagen fiber. They make the ligament, and the role the ligaments are playing, that they hold the bones close together in the synovial joint. That is the function of the ligament, holding bones close together in a synovial joint. So eighth point was for the ligament. Now moving on to the ninth point. Now ligaments are often designated by individual names. So there are various kind of ligaments, and this different ligaments are given different names. That is the meaning of this point. Let's say here in this knee joint, tala is shown. The ligament which is present or which is joining the tala is known as the talar ligament. So this is the talar ligament they are showing. And here, let's say this ligament, the name of this ligament, so fibular collateral ligament. So as you can see in the knee joint, lateral to fibula, this ligament is present. So that's why this ligament is known as fibular collateral ligament. So there are various kind of ligament around the synovial joint, and they are having the different names. Then synovial membrane. See, we have discussed the fibrous membrane. Now the inner layer of the articular capsule is known as the synovial membrane, and the synovial membrane is made up of areolar connective tissue, and in the synovial membrane elastic fibers are present. So now here in the synovial joint with the red color, this red color membrane is the synovial membrane. Over here also synovial membrane is shown, so you can go through this figure. This one is the synovial membrane. You follow the arrow and synovial membrane, red one in the red color, synovial membrane are shown. Now what is the role of the synovial membrane? Now many a times what happens in the synovial membrane, there is a deposition of the adipose tissue. So in the synovial membrane there is an accumulation of adipose tissue. This adipose tissue, we know it is made up of fat. So in the cell there are fats are present. So this adipose tissue are known as the fat pads. Okay, and one example is the infratalar fat pad in the knee joint. So here with the yellow color, infratalar fat pad is shown, and this is the synovial membrane. So in the synovial membrane, many a times adipose tissue is accumulated, and that is known as the fat pad. So this side the fat pad is shown. Over here little bit fat pad is present. Okay, so 11th point is regarding the fat pad. Now the 12th point, synovial fluid. First of all, let me show you the synovial fluid, where it is present. So synovial fluid is present around the articulating bones. Okay, so here all this space, all this space is filled with the synovial fluid. Okay, here also synovial fluid is there. Now what this synovial fluid is? So synovial fluid, okay, now the synovial fluid is secreted by synovial membrane and synovial, then O means egg, okay. So synovial fluid is viscous, it is clear and pale yellow color fluid, and it is given the name synovial fluid because it is having similar appearance and consistency to uncooked egg white. So we know when we break the egg, the watery, slippery liquid which comes out when the egg is broken, that is albumin. So the synovial fluid, its appearance is its consistency, its slipperiness, its viscousness is similar to uncooked egg white. Now, what this synovial fluid is made up of? So, in the synovial fluid, hyaluronic acid is present, and this acid is secreted by the synovial cells which are present in the synovial membrane. And this synovial fluid, it is also composed of interstitial fluid, and this interstitial fluid is filtered from blood plasma. So we can say synovial fluid is made up of hyaluronic acid and interstitial fluid. Now what this synovial fluid is doing? So it is forming a thin film over the surface of the articular capsule. So bones are joining in the synovial joint, and the synovial fluid is forming a thin film. Let's say this is one articulating bone, this one is the another articulating bone. So between this two bone, the synovial fluid is forming a very thin film. So this is the 12th point in which we are discussing the synovial fluid. Now point number 13, what are the function of the synovial fluid? So this fluid, the function of synovial fluid include reduction of friction between the bone. This fluid lubricate the joint, absorb shocks, supply oxygen and nutrients, remove carbon dioxide and metabolic waste from the chondrocyte which are present in the articular cartilage. So articular cartilage is having the cell known as chondrocyte. These cells are supplied by oxygen. Oxygen is supplied to the cell, nutrients is supplied to the cell. So who is supplying this material to this chondrocyte? So synovial fluid. Then from this cell carbon dioxide is removed. Who is removing? Synovial fluid is removing the carbon dioxide from this cell. Now here one thing we need to remember, that cartilage is avascular tissue. So in the cartilage blood vessels are not present. Okay, so some of the blood function are performed by the synovial fluid. That is the meaning of this point. Now the point number 14. Now in the synovial fluid, phagocytic cells are present. This cell remove microbes, they kill the bacteria, and due to the normal wear and tear in the synovial joint, some cellular debris are formed. So this cellular debris are removed by the synovial fluid. Now point number 15. Now right now you are observing or you are attending this presentation lecture, and it is possible that you are sitting on a chair or the sofa. So right now in your body there are synovial joint, and since you are stationary at one place, you are sitting at one place, what happens, the synovial fluid becomes quite viscous when our body is in resting position. So when our body is in resting position, the synovial fluid becomes gel like or it is viscous. But when we start moving our body, let's say when we walk, when we run, when we jump, that time what happens, the fluid becomes less viscous. So that's why it is said that before we do the exercises, let's say we go to gym, so when we enter in the gym we should not perform direct exercise, but before that, before doing the exercise, we should do some warm up exercise. Because when we do the warm up, what happens, the viscous gel like synovial fluid is becomes less viscous. So when we are warming up, so our synovial joint, it is filled by the secretion of the synovial fluid tremendously. So this synovial fluid is protecting the articulating bones of the joint, so we cannot get the injuries when we are doing the exercises. Okay, so this is about the state of the synovial fluid, in which form the synovial fluid is present when we are resting, and when we are doing the exercise it becomes less viscous. Okay, and in the last point, this is not the theory point, this is the this is for the general information. Many a times some people have the habit of cracking the finger knuckles. Okay, and I will try to crack my finger knuckle so that you can understand. See, can you hear this sound? So I am cracking my finger knuckles. And if you are interested why this sound is coming when we knuckle our fingers, so you can read this information, so you can understand the sound of our cracking finger knuckles. Now before I wind up this presentation lecture, I would like to show you all the figures. Most of the figure I have shown to you, but this is also good information, so you can go through this information regarding the synovial joint, read all the information. Okay, Rest of the figures I have shown you, already shown you. This was the main figure that we had discussed today. Okay, then one more figure, then this is also very important figure, okay, for the synovial joint. With this, we have completed the discussion on the structure of the synovial joint. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation lecture, and I also hope that this presentation lecture will be helpful in your exam preparation and in your studies. My name is Manish Kushti sir. I am from Ahmedabad, India. Bye bye. Namaste.